much. Hello, everyone. I'm Cordelia Osewa ED&I. I'm Group D&I lead at BT. Over 15 years, obviously, in D&I. Don't look it. Thank you very much. And previous years, working in D&I, I did work in different sectors as a consultant and also in social mobility roles.
Hi everyone. I'm Suki. I'm working as Head of Talent Acquisition and Diversity, Equality and Inclusion for Avask Accounting and Business Consultant. So Avask is a professional services company and I head up the DEI strategy there. Prior to that, I was working in human resources for the NHS and also the university.
Hi. Now I'm going to attempt to talk without choking because I inhaled my cheesecake. So sorry about that. Okay, so my name is Emmy Berradugo and I work for a company called Elastic as their Senior Manager of Recruiting Enablement. So I'll explain what my job is now, but just to give you a background, I've worked in recruitment, agency and in-house for coming up to 20 years, so it's giving away my age. In my previous role, a lot of my focus was around inclusive hiring. I now work in, like I said, a recruiting enablement team. So my internal customers are the recruiters. My job is to help them to recruit better, recruit faster, help them to get more diverse talent. So whether this is through recruitment learning, recruitment marketing, the tech stack they have, that basically encompasses my role. Over to you.
Amazing. So I'm Jack. I'm Rowan. Hopefully you can tell that's me there. So I work for the Disability Resource Centre Birmingham. So I'm a board director there on a voluntary basis. So I suppose we're a small organisation, employ about 50 colleagues. However, you know, we cover all of the North West and West Midlands area. And really sort of driving, of course, D&I, inclusivity and, you know, making an impact to, of course, local communities. I've had the pleasure of working on, of course, Eurovision and, of course, for Commonwealth Games. So I'm a massive volunteer advocate. I post a lot on LinkedIn about disability recruitment. So I'm going to show my sort of vulnerability. So I'm registered severely risk impaired myself. And I suppose when I started to look for jobs around sort of 16, because I kept seeing all of my friends get jobs, like I felt, you know, I resonated with presentation from early. I was like 70% of people which I felt I didn't get a job because of my disability. And I was quite fortunate enough to get a job and then progress quite fastly, rapid up and in a recruitment position today. And, you know, I just really wanted to sort of give back to that community and, you know, be a sort of advocacy that, you know, anything is achievable.
Excellent. Thank you, Jack, and thank you, everyone. So today's panel is really around progressing your DEI strategy. And actually, it's really nice to have heard some of the conversations, some of the presentations today already this morning, talking around that and actually fostering that that culture of inclusivity and belonging. But I know that there's a lot more as well. So as I said, I've got a few set questions that we're going to ask the panelists. We really want this to be a safe, open space for you to ask any questions without fear of saying the wrong thing, putting your foot in it. So once we've asked those questions, we're then going to open it up to Slido, but feel free to put any questions in Slido in the meantime. So I think the first question that we wanted to get started with is, what does diversity in the workplace mean to you? It means a lot of different things to different people. People have different definitions. Emmy, I'm going to come to you first on this. Sorry, are you okay with your cheesecake?
I mean, you just told me about this. Sure.
But yeah, what does diversity in the workplace mean to you specifically?
Okay. So for me, it means that when I come to work or when I work remotely at the moment. So if I go to a meeting, or if I engage in a social event to do with work, or if I'm on a Slack channel, whatever the means of communication is, I can see myself represented and I can also see other people. So whether it's people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different accents, people forget about that, different ages, different religions. I want my workplace to look like a I suppose, the world that I would like to be in. And understanding, there's, certain areas, people talk about London being very diverse. I think it depends what part of London you live in. But if I had to paint my perfect picture, my perfect world, I would see all those different types of groups of people. And I also want to see that in a workplace. So that's what it means to me.
Excellent. Cordelia?
Oh, okay. So I think I'm just going to first of all talk about, before I answer, the idea of progressing your D&I strategy.
Yep.
And I think I just want to call it out because I find it very interesting that organizations have almost like a question around how do we progress our D&I strategy? And no one talks about progressing their business strategy or addressing their health and safety strategy or their risk strategy. So I'm going to start with that first, about the mindset of organizations. And then when we talk about diversity, looking at it through those lenses, any organization that's operating in a community or environment that doesn't have a workforce that reflects the environment in which it's operating, or the customers that is selling its products or services to, or engaging in its products and services, is not ready. So that's what diversity means to me. You must reflect the communities you're operating in. You must reflect the customers or the people you're engaging with your products and services. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, really interesting. Feel free to jump in at any point for any panelists. Go on, Suki.
Thank you. I think for me, diversity is about creating a working environment where people from different backgrounds, abilities, nationalities are valued for their contribution and what they bring to the table. And I think it's about celebrating those unique perspectives and also being able to challenge bias and discrimination, because I think sometimes people don't always have that confidence. And I think it's really about challenging the status quo and fostering that inclusivity, I would say, in the workplace, and everybody feeling like actually they have that sense of belonging.
Jack?
Yeah, I totally agree with all of the points raised. I think, inclusivity, I think diversity should embed that and that belonging piece. I'm a massive advocate for that. I think what's really resonated with me is, I can't remember who said it, but individuality. I think, that's a massive thing about, being yourself and having that safe culture in work to do that. And I think it all just comes down to day one and just getting them clear, like D&I strategy, as you said, into place and having that, global impact.
Excellent. So moving on to the next question is around some of the biggest barriers you're seeing to effective change. I know when we were talking earlier this week, it's like, does that mean within the recruitment, or is it the talent and people strategy? Because obviously recruitment is only about getting people into the business. It's not the wider story. So what's some of the biggest barriers you've seen? Cordelia, I might ask this one to you, because I know you don't just look after the recruitment strategy, and some of the ways that you're overcoming those barriers.
The first step, the biggest barrier where it falls actually is about the rationale. Because when we talk about minority groups in the workplace, we need to also understand that the majority group have to understand the rationale why we're talking about more Black people, looking at disabled people, looking at neurodiversity differently. People turn up in the workplace and they just want to earn a living. They're really ambitious. They want to progress. So we need to take people on a journey. And I think where it falls at the first hurdle is when the rationale is not really communicated in a way where the typical person from the majority group, it might be men, it might be women, whatever is the majority group, don't understand the rationale. And it's almost like they're being sidelined or exited from the company. And I think the other thing that actually is a big barrier is about the leadership. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, it becomes a HR focus. Then it's almost a very linear way of looking at it. It needs to be something that's communicated by the leaders all the time. People need to understand that it's a priority, a strategic priority for the business. Mm-hmm. And the last one, because I'm just conscious everyone's waiting for me to finish, it's about resourcing. We're entering into a period now of economic uncertainty. And what we always see is almost like very cyclical. You can almost wait for LinkedIn to just see who's going to be chucked out soon. And usually it's from HR or D&I. And I think that's really, it's the real message to people that D&I is something that we think about when it's all nice and cuddly and fluffy and everybody's feeling good. But when times get hard, then we divert and we go back to things that we've always done as usual. So really it's about the messaging for me, the leadership and what they're saying, and also the resourcing. If it's not consistent, then as soon as that leader who's the champion goes out the door, then people revert to their old behaviors.
Thank you. I think, just following on from what Cordelia has said, it is really, I think in some organisations, it's really that kind of lack of resources. It's really, I think, being able to showcase that return on D&I investment. And I think also getting that buy-in as well from C-suite, because sometimes they're so focused on other areas of the business that actually diversity just falls to the back. And it's actually, being able to explain why it's so important and it's so prevalent in this day and age. And I think, just from having seen how much the recruitment landscape has changed over the last few years, one of the things is D&I is so important. I think in this day and age, candidates just don't want to join a company that offer a great salary, offer great benefits. It's actually what are they doing to promote and accelerate DEI? And I think some of the barriers is, that lack of resources, that kind of lack of buy-in from the C-suite. And I think it's going to be the ongoing education piece that's really going to be key, but also, as I said, having metrics, KPIs, really showcasing, the progress that has been made in DEI, what's been done, and how far our kind of business is progressing.
I think from my point of view, it's a little bit different. My last two organisations, so my last one and my current one, they have been really passionate about DEI. There's, and it's communicated constantly. So whether it's in meetings or email communications or employee resource groups, they are or, even lunch and learns, they're bringing people in. But the challenge I've had with them is that I've always just gone for, their big, shiny, big bang theory. So they were just, big bang action. So for example, they think, okay, recruitment, all you need to do is post a job on Black women in HR. Excellent, we're diverse. And it's like, no, it's more. You've got to do more than this. You've got to look at every single part of your recruitment journey, and those small incremental changes that you make all come together to make your, and I'm talking from a recruitment perspective, make your recruitment process more inclusive. So if I take a step back and I look, for example, at my last organisation, one of the things they wanted to do was bring in more neurodiverse people. Okay, so fantastic. Well, we've spoken to other organisations. We've got a really good idea, which we want to run past you, and other organisations done this. We think we can do it. We want to give every single candidate interview questions in advance. They nearly had a meltdown. And it was just like, Emmy, this is cheating, and how would we verify the candidates? And they'll just be lying. And my team were struggling with this as well. There's like, but we know it works. So it's like, okay, well, put yourself in their shoes. Okay, do they understand why we're doing it? No. Have you presented the data to show that, okay, other organisations are doing it, and this actually has led to incremental change in bringing in people from different diverse groups, and in particular neurodiverse candidates? No. So when someone challenges you, present them with the data, because it's very hard to argue with the data. It's not subjective. Once you present them with the data, it's a lot easier to change people's opinions. Mm-hmm. And what I found, even then, you can present people with data and you still get some people going, yeah, I'm still not sure about this,
Not sure I trust that data.
You're like, okay, right, no worries. So again, what I'll do there is you don't expect people to change their minds overnight and understand everything about DEI. Understand there might be a different point in their journey to you. So you can bring them in slowly and say, okay, which is what I did. And with my last organisation, I said, let's just try it. Let's just try it for one division, for one period of time. And we'll trial it and we'll get the feedback and see what happens. Them people within that group, they were like, oh, okay, well, this actually does work. Fantastic. So you are now my internal champion. I'm going to take you. You're going to speak to this group of people, my critical friends, as I call them, to try and slowly win them over. And so that's what I'm doing in this organisation too.
Excellent. So is that continual incremental learnings and education, which goes back to your rationale point, Cordelia, as well, which is giving them the rationale. Jack, was there anything you wanted to add from the sort of barriers to effective change?
Yeah, no, I think you've all highlighted it amazing, and especially resonated with your point, where literally when we were doing the Eurovision recruitment, literally we worked in partnership with MenCap within sort of the northwest area. So I kept thinking it's southwest Liverpool, but it's actually northwest. And literally, when we went out and recruited, because we took 30 volunteers and 2 paid staff from MenCap, and when we went out and did the interview process, what we did is we allowed, of course, their sort of carer or a parental guidance to come in with them. And literally, I just remember the recruitment manager was like, no, it's not right. Like, it's not, they won't come off well enough. But I think, it's all down to individuality. And I think it's all about I think people are scared of making mistakes. But I think if you don't try, and I think it's all about doing the right thing for the candidate and having that sort of major impact, really, and just thinking, what is the worst possible outcome? And, the outcome was that, we hired 30 of them colleagues to volunteer, which they did a fantastic job, and 2 of them secured part-time jobs as well. So literally, it's giving them that sort of skills, giving them that experience, giving them that exposure to an interview process, because none of them's been in an interview before. And also, I think, going on sort of barriers, I think it's education and awareness, really. Just from all the organisations which I worked in, I think there's this lack of consistency. So I think there's some areas which started well, but I think other areas, we really struggle with it. And it's just that I think it all comes down to being scared. But I always think one of the best advice is about doing the right thing for your colleague or a candidate.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing to say there, Jack, doing the right thing. We're going to move on to a slightly different sort of focus. There's always a very big focus on attracting diverse talent. And it's a top challenge we've seen for the last 18 months on all of our events that we run. What about the retention piece? What are people doing in that area? I know we've spoken a little bit around sort of ERGs and that inclusivity, the belonging piece, the equity. What else is being done? Suki, I might come to you first on this one.
Sure. I think what we're doing at the moment is really celebrating each of us. We have over 23 languages spoken throughout the company, and we have a kind of real diverse workforce. And what we're doing is really celebrating individual kind of cultures and religions and backgrounds. And, we did an event for International Women's Day. We're doing something this month. It's Pride Month. It's, we've been celebrating different kind of cultures. And I think that retention piece is going to be that ongoing work, because I think it's great getting people through the door, but actually, what are you doing next? And also, what action are you constantly taking to really embed D&I into the workforce? And it's really about kind of, having these groups where people can speak up, where people are empowered to speak up, having that safe space, and also really kind of celebrating individual cultures, personalities, to really retain the workforce that you have, and also supporting individuals in terms of that progression and that development. And sometimes, people from underrepresented groups may not, feel as confident, but it's actually giving them that empowerment to actually say, well, actually, this opportunity is available to everybody, and we want everybody to shine and kind of be empowered to grow.
Anyone got anything to add on the retention piece and inclusivity, belonging?
Yeah. Yes, as you just said, literally in DRC, of course, we've just, of course, it's Pride Month. Of course, it was Global Accessibility Day a few weeks ago as well. And then we had neurodiversity. And I think it's about really creating that solid culture within a business. And I think with DRC, it feels more like family. Since we're a small charity, just employ just over 50 colleagues, literally, and the divide of, diverse talent within that, 50% of the workforce have some form of disability or identified, as inclusive. So literally, I think it's so important to really carry on that legacy. I know that sounds really cheesy, and that sounds something which I talked about at Birmingham Commonwealth Games, but it's literally just carry on that momentum. And, I just always refer it back that it's getting it right. And just, when we get it wrong, I think it's just learning from the mistakes and just building on from there.
Yeah. Can I just add a quick one? I think for the retention piece, we've been on a journey at BT. So 2020, when we had George Floyd, we had COVID, the pandemic, there was no denying we had inequalities in society. So we had to do a lot of almost homework on what we can do better as a business. And for the first time, we set targets. We made them public, so it's in public domain, and we're reporting our progress against those targets. So it's now a business imperative for us. And everyone is accountable, line managers more so, leaders more so. So there's almost like a regular cadence now where we're reporting on how we're progressing against those targets. And when we go to market and we're thinking about our value proposition, we've got some brilliant people, I know you know one of them, who are going to market. And we are actually we're at war to get talent into BT, because we recognize that young people don't see BT as the employer of choice traditionally, but we're a very stable employer. So when we speak to people, we're establishing a rationale, back to the rationale, why we want diversity in our workplace. When they come in, we know that we have a responsibility to make them want to stay. And that's why, thanks for mentioning data, that's why all the regular data collection, data review, the cadence of reporting, is all about where are we losing people and where are people not feeling like they belong. So it's almost like a double reflection on what our diversity data is telling us, but also what our engagement survey is telling us. And matching those two to see where we have pockets of resistance to D&I is very much evidence-based. Now, with D&I has moved from a nice to have now, but a need to have. And that's the approach we're taking.
That's really interesting. And do you think, and this is, we'll see how the question goes, do you think that people need to set targets and publish those targets to be able to achieve proper buy-in across the company?
The targets came after the buy-in.
Okay.
So it was more around, okay, this is something that we know we need to do. We need to reflect the communities that we serve, the people who are our customers. And BT is it's a household name. So we almost know that we have a social responsibility in the UK to be a force for good. And when we started setting the targets, it wasn't set in one day. So this is 100,000 plus workforce. There had to be a lot of work around, our representation, different cities. So our Birmingham targets are different from, let's say, our Glasgow targets, but we have collective targets, and it's just holding us to account. This is rigorous target setting, looking at the census, looking at the local representation. Then we also know that when it comes to our business units, we have differences. So our technology part of the business has an issue around attracting women. But when it comes to our face-to-face, our retail part, we have more women in that area. So our targets are very nuanced depending on the area. It just holds us to account.
Yeah, excellent.
If I add a little bit, because I suppose following on from what everybody else has said, I suppose more so in my last organisation, we tried to, as in we, the recruitment team, one of our biggest bugbears was that, we were really good at bringing in diverse talent. We were patting ourselves on the back, so well done us. But the problem was the organisation weren't keeping them. So we were like on a constant kind of, wheel, which was annoying us. So we said, okay, so what do we need to do? We need to work closely with our HR business partners, and we need to work with our employee resource groups to try and put in place strategies to keep people. And we did this really from the day they signed the contract. So from as soon as a candidate signed an offer, we will start talking to them about what their accessibility needs were. So we designed with the HR business partners, for example, a disability passport. So a disability passport was an online tool. They can put in all their needs that they needed, whether it's like a computer screen or any other kind of tools that they might need, adjustable, flexible working hours. But it meant that they didn't have to go through having this conversation over and over again about their needs. So it's right from day one, we embed in diversity and inclusion. Then once they've started, they're assigned with a buddy. Now, as much as possible, we try to make sure that their buddy was also someone from an underrepresented group, so they again felt comfortable. We talked to them about the employee resource group. So we just kept talking about there's different support systems. Yes, you've got your manager. Yes, you've got your colleagues, but you've also got employee resource groups you go to. You've got your buddy that you can talk to as well. We talked to them about our mentorship scheme that we had. So as on a biannual basis, we had enrollments into what was called Breaking Barriers, which is a scheme for underrepresented groups. So again, this is about career progression. It's about how do you move forward in the organisation? How do you gain new skills? How do you get visibility to maybe senior level? How do you move into other groups? And we specifically focus on certain groups within under the represented wider group area, where we were lacking in the business, for whatever reason. So, right, again, we're doing this from day one. Once they're in the organisation, where, managers had performance targets. So every single manager in their quarterly reviews had a D&I objective. So they had to show what they were doing from a D&I perspective, whether in terms of, from a management perspective or in terms of what they were delivering in terms of products and services. So it became just an everyday topic, which was easy for people to talk about, because sometimes people still struggle to talk about diversity and they find it uncomfortable. But we're saying, look, for day one, we're setting the tone. Every single thing that we talk about is to do with diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And that just made it easier and easier and easier to retain people, because they can see the work that was actually being done. Yeah. And it meant that if they, people used to come to us and say, look, I'll give you an example. We were apparently a disability confident employer. Our disability ERG group said, you're not. You've just got accreditation, but this organisation hasn't done anything. And we were like, oh, okay, let's get
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, they challenged us. We got them involved in designing new processes. And one of them was this disability passport. And because they were involved, they can see the progression. We can see we definitely weren't where we needed to be, but we were trying. We were on a journey. We were honest about it. We're saying, come and help us. And then therefore they're more invested, they're more bought in, they're more likely to stay with the organisation. So it's less of a, I suppose, issue or
pushback.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Really enjoyed that. So we've got quite a few questions and only 5 minutes or so apologies. But we're going to try and whiz through them. So I might just ask one question to one panellist. Feel free to jump in if you particularly want to take it. So Matt says, we've touched throughout, it's actually quite hard to read at this angle, so apologies if I don't read it quite right. And we've touched throughout today on bringing your authentic self to work. What do you do when that someone's authentic self is problematic or harmful to others? So old school mentality, disruptive, lack of empathy, etc. Have you had that situation? What approach would you take?
We don't ask for your authentic self. We ask for the best version of yourself in the workplace. My authentic self is in a dressing gown with a cocktail.
That sounds pretty good to me, Cordelia.
Yeah. Let's be real here. Okay. Best version of yourself, okay, please.
That's very, very true. Very true. Have you had that situation where perhaps the best version is not,
I think,
the right standard?
One of my favorite definitions of what culture is culture. The culture is defined by the worst behavior you tolerate. And it's not really about asking people to bring the best version of themselves. It's really about what behaviors do you allow to go unchecked, unchallenged in the workplace, because that sets the precedence for other people about what they can get away with. And sometimes it's senior leaders that you might have to have a conversation with about maybe the tone or the language. And we're all learning here. So we have a very intergenerational workforce now, where you have people who are 60, people who are 18, and they view things very differently. So what I always say is, so long as it's about positive intent, and you're not intentionally aiming to hurt someone, people can be corrected. Yeah. And I'm really proud to say we've been on a journey at BT. So we have a huge workforce. We have people who are engineers, field engineers. We have people who work in corporate group. It's all about getting people to say, okay, I might have said this outside. I wasn't challenged. I've said it today. You've called me out. I apologize. I'll move on. And it's learning. We have to really be forgiving in this D&I space.
Yeah, that's really good. How do we ensure that white, straight, male colleagues feel included too? A lot of young men are feeling excluded, rightly or wrongly, end up buying into the misogynistic messaging of people. So I actually think there was some data or research where actually a lot of people that weren't disclosing their information were white males because they had a fear of not getting through a process. What's your takes on that?
I would say really it's about having those employee resource groups, creating that space where people can actually speak up, or having kind of D&I champions where if someone doesn't feel confident in speaking up, they can actually consult with their D&I champion who can speak up on their behalf. And actually, really having action plans, again, that are measured, because you can't have an action plan and say you're going to do something, but then not actually implement it or effectively review the progress. It's really about measuring the progress of that, but also creating these platforms where people can actually speak up, and whether that's directly or indirectly, it's allowing that engagement to happen, but actually listening to some of the stuff that's been said and tackling that within the organisation, going to the C-suite, liaising with the HR, engaging the workforce to really try and make a positive difference.
Excellent, thank you.
If I say something on the white men, I think people always call out white men not wanting to be doing this, not wanting to be talking about this. We have to realize that some of the language that we use sometimes can be scary. If we think about the debates that we're having now, about being misogynistic or having some feelings towards maybe some of your trans colleagues, people are afraid to make mistakes. And people feel excluded when they don't see themselves represented in that journey. And I think it's back again to that rationale. I know I sound really boring, I'm sorry. But back again to that rationale, when you're having conversations in that organization about moving forward around D&I, those white men need to be involved. They actually occupy the spaces that I don't occupy. They need to be involved. They need to almost have an authentic platform to understand why diversity and inclusion is important to them. I'm sure they have women in their families. Yeah. I'm sure some of them are carers. I'm sure some of them have been on a journey with their parents. I'm sure some of them have come out at some point. There needs to be something they can almost pin and say, actually, I know when I felt excluded in life, and that I'll take that feeling and I'll fight on behalf of someone else. Yeah. And actually, they're my biggest champions.
Yeah, it's actually making them feel included, they're not the problem, they're part of the solution.
We are all part of the problem. And let me be fair, white men have done some bad things, okay? Okay, let's call it out. But some white men have done some amazing things. Yeah. Let's not make everyone feel guilty for the sins of a few.
Yeah, perfect. We're going to do one last question. We don't have an ED&I strategy, and actually we'll use this as the final question, kind of building your sort of one key takeaway. So we don't have an ED&I strategy, but want to start building one within our business. Where would you propose to start creating that strategy? So if you've got nothing currently, what's the starting point?
Is everyone looking at me?
Go on, Emmy. Yeah.
I'm looking around. I would always go back to data. Because you don't know where to start from if you don't have anything, if you don't have a baseline, So you can look at the, different data points. So it could, whether it's age or ethnicity or socioeconomic background or religion, you can do that as an organization as a whole. You could break it down by department because maybe, some departments are better than others. You can look at your recruitment process and, who you're bringing in at each stage. So right from application stage, where do they drop off in the process? So you can actually fix stuff. Once you've got all those various different data points from recruitment all the way to like when employees, how many people are getting promoted, which groups are getting promoted, how quickly are they getting promoted, you can kind of build a bit of a story and understand where you are right now. Yep. When you understand where you are right now, then you can start thinking about, okay, I'm not quite sure what I need to do, but I know I have a problem here. I know this group of people are not progressing. I know we're not hiring as many of this group of people, for example. But you can't do that by guesswork, which is what a lot of people tend to do. They just think, yeah, I'm going to pick on this. Yeah, mental health. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to add to that again, some of my best work as a consultant was actually doing that initial, almost like a scoping piece. Because most organizations, we say, oh, we don't have the data. We haven't got that sophisticated yet. If you've got people, you've got the data. And sometimes people are not willing to share with you because they don't trust you. And if you really want to invest in this, get an independent consultant in or an independent person in and just speak to your colleagues. And they will tell you how they feel, where they feel excluded, where they feel like you're not hearing them. And then we can start from there. And then maybe you can devote more resources to actually getting the system in to have the data. But if you've got colleagues in there, they've got a voice. They might not be speaking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are over time, apologies. I'm going to finish off on what your top piece of advice would be to the audience. Jack, I might start with you. I'm going to try and do this real quick, so like 30 seconds or so. Go on, Jack.
Wow. So I think my top piece of advice is, I think just listen what's out there. As you build on data, it's so important. And also just don't be afraid of making a mistake. I think, the best results are from mistakes made in the past. But as long as we've done the right thing to rectify it and learned from them, I think that's the best advice I can give.
Excellent. Go on, Emmy.
Cool. My advice would be to expect resistance, but not fear resistance. And the reason why I say that is because if you want to make your recruitment process more inclusive, if you want to make your organization more inclusive, you're going to have to bring in change. And as we know, not everyone likes change. Yeah. So expect that people are going to go, oh, no, I don't want to do this, even though they say they're passionate about, making the organization more inclusive. And just think, they're not necessarily pushing back. Don't take it personally. Just think that, okay, when people push back, they just need more information. Provide that information.
Excellent. Sophie?
Yeah, I would say adopt a holistic approach to DEI. Really don't just look at one kind of area of diversity, look at all areas, all angles. What can we do? Putting in mentorship programs, having a podcast, having people, really tell their stories and then letting other people feel empowered. So I'd really say adopt a holistic approach to DEI.
Yeah, I think D&I is about culture change. And if you bear that in mind, it's going to take some time. And it's going to get really tiring. It's going to get really frustrating, but you have to hang in there and you have to bring people along.
Excellent. What a brilliant panel. Really enjoyed that and hope our audience did as well. So big round of applause. Thank you so much.